Okay, so the first thing that when you visit the website, the first thing that after the little introduction, the first thing is CNX. What is CNX? So CNX is an operating system manager. It manages the lifetime of the OSs that are deployed with it. CNX is not an installer, and I'm going to explain why that is the case. It's not a container. It's not a program to flash USBs like DV, for example.
And I'm
I
betting
mean, you
you've
can
heard
you
all of these explanations
yeah.
of what it is. Keep going. This is good.
uh, it's also not virtualization software. So what CNX does is frugal installations. For example, there's another Linux distribution that also does frugal installations. I think it's TinyCore,
Hmm.
yeah, or Poppy Linux, one of those. They also do frugal installations. Uh, what most Linux distributions do are full installations. Now, what is the difference? Well, the difference is that a frugal installation only occupies one folder in a single partition, and the rest of the partition is free. And a full installation is where Linux occupies the whole partition, and in that partition you have the regular uh, Linux folders like bin, sbin, those folders. So that's the difference.
Welcome back. So today's episode of IG Talks. This is a very kind of informal talk show kind of episode where we chat to different developers and different people in the Linux community, and we find out what they're doing, what they're up to, and what they're involved in with their projects. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Uri Herrera, who's the founder and graphics designer for the Nitrux Project, which some of you may or may not be familiar with this project. It is well, we're going to talk about what all it is, but first of all, I mean, big warm welcome to you, Uri. As we just learned a second ago, you're over in Mexico. I'm here in Australia. We make the time zones work as best we can through the power of the internet. It's so good to have you here. Feel free to introduce yourself. Who are you?
Thanks. Well, I'm the founder of Nitrux. I'm also a graphics designer by trade. I also contributed to KDE pretty much a long time ago. I mainly started in the Linux world, making artwork, icon themes, and that's where I started to contribute to open source projects. KDE in this case, I made the Breeze icon theme, and I also made the current Plasma theme.
Wow, yeah, that is some pretty major contributions that I'm sure everybody has interacted with at some point in their
Yeah.
Linux journey. That's amazing. What are some things that you like to do, in your spare time when you're not doing graphics designing or working on the Nitrix project?
Uh, Gaming, definitely gaming.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Any particular game that you're really into at the moment?
Currently, I'm playing Monster Hunter World and the new Crash Bandicoot
Uh,
remaster that they released. Yeah.
yes. I have that queued up and I'm going to get to it eventually. Right now, I'm working my way through Spyro.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. I also
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
that one.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, so when it comes to the Nitrix project, I think we're going to unpack it as much as we can over the course of this next hour or so. But if you were standing in an elevator with somebody and you were trying to explain what Nitrix was in kind of 30, 60 seconds, what would that
Yeah.
look like? Because I know that in the Linux community, some people see it as just another Linux distribution, and there's an awful lot more going on than just a Linux distribution in terms of what people traditionally think of. So, what is
Hmm.
the elevator pitch for the Nitrix project?
Um, Nitrux is a software company. We develop open source and free and open source software, and we want to have a operating system that it's made for multiple form factors, not just the desktop. We want to make a convergent operating system because we want to also have it running on embedded systems on not just like the phone. For example, we also wanted to have an operating system for IoT devices where there's you know not a good option in terms of, for example, security, things like that. We also want to have like the whole platform, the applications platform. So we created Maui Kit, which is a UI framework. Uh, as it's probably known by now, we also uh, work closely with the AppImage developers. One of the former developers at Nitrux is part of the AppImage team. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. This is yeah, and I think what I didn't realize a few years ago when I first came across your project, and I think what a lot of folk don't fully grasp is yeah, is just how how versatile and how adaptable you're trying to make this particular project. A lot of people see it as a very desktop facing or, very desktop user facing project. But because of a lot of the underlying, tools and frameworks and stuff that you guys are trying to work on, this is something that is a fair bit more ambitious than that. And yeah, we'll talk about all these different components in a little bit more detail. That was a brilliant summary. Thank you very much. Um, but yeah, like honestly, just I guess my own comments is that you'd be well aware of other open source projects that have at least tried in each of those individual areas before, and some of them have had no small kind of backing behind them, and anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to do here is just tease our conversation for a little bit later, just to say that for those of you who are listening and who are thinking, oh man, okay, he's talking an OS for IoT devices and convergence and all that kind of thing. That's yeah, we've kind of seen attempts at it happen before, but we've never seen the technology fully be able to connect to be able to run through those different layers. So I'm going to be so curious to come back to this. Okay, so let's rewind the clock a little bit and talk about where Nitrux came from as a project, where it started. You mentioned before that you got your introduction into the free and open source software world with graphics designing and with icon packs and themes and stuff. And you mentioned that you mentioned the Breeze KDE Plasma theme. So what was the initial spark for creating the Nitrux project or beginning to work on this project?
um, well, the first time that I like started to make artwork, it was because I was using Ubuntu. I was just starting like full time using Linux at that. This was like 7 years ago, more or less, and I was customizing my system, and there was a point where I was just not happy with the themes that I had. So I figured, well, it would be nice if I could change anything, right? I didn't know that you could actually change everything. So I started researching a little bit how I could make like a new icons or something, and I started just doing that, just downloading Inkscape, drawing things, and started changing one icon at a time. Then I ended up like 3 4 months later, I ended up creating a whole icon pack, and I uploaded that to DeviantArt, and it actually was covered by, oh my god, Ubuntu. So which I was not expecting. I mean that was pretty cool.
I can imagine. Wow. Yeah, wow. So just sort of coming back to that, I think, I don't know, I certainly don't really fully appreciate the amount of work that goes into, the visual design of of an operating system, the iconography, the fonts and all that kind of thing. So if we just sort of sidetrack here for just a moment, when it comes to designing an icon pack, you mentioned 3 or 4 months to get sort of a complete icon pack. Is that sort of working on it pretty like full time, or is it kind of working in your spare time, or how long would it take, do you reckon, to come up with just one icon as a part of that icon pack?
Well, at that time, since I was starting to actually make use of Inkscape, it would take me maybe like an hour or something. Uh, I mean, right now it takes me like 5 minutes.
Whew.
But I mean, yeah, right now it's a lot faster.
Yeah.
At the time, it really took me, for example, the Nitrux icon theme, which was like the whole uh, beginning of the Nitrux project as a thing. It took me like 3 years to make it more like a fully complete icon theme. And the current icon theme that we use on the distribution, uh, it maybe took me like 2 months to have like the icons that we currently ship.
Yeah, wow, amazing. So then, okay, so it starts with the icons and the graphic design work. How did the project start evolving from there? What point did it, at what point did it start growing in its scope and in its ambition?
Um, it started after I like made icon themes and KDE package themes. So it started because I mean I had already changed the appearance, right? So what else can I change? Uh, at that time I was like already using Linux full time, and I was thinking, well, I mean, yeah, this is fine, this works, right? But wouldn't it be nice if it did maybe did some this particular thing in this way, or maybe it would do this way. I mean, it would make it more simple, I think. And so this was around 2014, and at that time it was just me and another person. Uh, he was called Hashir Mohammed. Uh, he's he joined me and he started making web applications. Um, so at that time we like decided, well, we should probably make our own distribution, like to see what we can change in it. And we also like entered for a bit the hardware business. It didn't work out as we would have wanted, but from entering the hardware business, it's the reason that Nitrux, so the Linux distribution was created.
Interesting, interesting. So, yeah, so you started mentioning that so you found somebody to work on the project with you, and a brief kind of look into getting into the hardware business as well that didn't go exactly the way you planned. Were I guess what were the initial sort of goals that you set out for the project, and did you just add goals to that as you went over time, or has there been a very significant evolution of what this project has aimed to achieve? Because I mean, I look at, and if I remember, I'm going to try and put a visual here of your website, nxos.org, and you look at all of the different components and goals and vision that you guys have for the project now, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is there is a lot going on here, and we'll try and unpack where the project's at in the present in just a moment. But is it sort of been a very iterative, evolutionary kind of process with the goals and what the project wants to do, or is it kind of always been the vision and now you've just got the words to put around it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's the way that Nitrux is right now. It is the way I always was hoping that it could be, but at the time, uh, it wasn't possible to do it all, to do everything that we do right now. Mostly because there was just two people. Right now, we are five, people working on Nitrux, so there's a lot more human resources put
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, definitely.
And now it is actually possible to do everything that I was hoping to do.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh, but no, like at the time, it was mostly like, let's see if we can actually make the distribution work first. Uh, let's see uh, if we can make the distribution work for the little single board computer that we were using to build a mini computer at the time. Let's see if we can actually make that work. We did make it work, but unfortunately, uh, at the time we were like one of the only one of two companies that were making mini PCs at the time. And out of nowhere, mini PCs started pouring all over the place. Obviously, a lot cheaper than we could produce them, so it didn't work out for us. Um, but now, I mean, the you could say the version of Nitrux that was developed maybe 5 years, 4 years ago, it's definitely nothing compared to the version that we currently uh, release.
Okay,
Okay.
so we've kind of covered the we've kind of covered where Nitrux has come from and how it's evolved and changed a little bit over time. And so, you know, like I mentioned before, the nxos.org webpage is, you know, it kind of breaks down. And you guys have actually done like a good job in articulating what are the key differentiation points of this project compared to, you know, your average, you know, Linux distribution, whether it's a, you know, an Ubuntu spin or a Fedora spin or whatever. And there are a lot of different moving pieces that kind of make this project very unique. So what I'd love to do is, you know, let's kind of break down what are the individual pieces of the Nitrux project as it exists now, and how each of those pieces kind of play into the grander vision of what you and the team are trying to achieve with this project. You can kind of start wherever you want to start with this, and just kind of, I mean, we could work our way down the web page or whatever you want to do, but there's a lot of different components here. So let's break it down piece by piece.
Okay, so the first thing that when you visit the website, the first thing that after the little introduction, the first thing is CNX. What is CNX? So CNX is an operating system manager. It manages the lifetime of the OSs that are deployed with it. CNX is not an installer, and I'm going to explain why that is the case. It's not a container. It's not a program to flash USBs like DV, for example.
And I'm
I
betting
mean, you
you've
can,
heard
you,
all of these explanations
yeah.
of what it is. Keep going, keep going. This is good.
uh, it's also not virtualization software. So what CNX does is frugal installations. For example, there's another Linux distribution that also does frugal installations. I think it's TinyCore,
Hmm.
yeah, or Poppy Linux, one of those. They also do frugal installations. Uh, what most Linux distributions do are full installations. Now, what is the difference? Well, the difference is that a frugal installation only occupies one folder in a single partition, and the rest of the partition is free. And a full installation is where Linux occupies the whole partition, and in that partition you have the regular uh, Linux folders like bin, sbin, those folders. So that's the difference. Uh, the way that Nitrux is installed, and that's why we don't use the word install, because it's not the same thing. We use the word deployed. So maybe that's why some people thought it was a container thing. Um, so the reason why we don't say that it's installed is that uh, when you deploy uh, Nitrux to a storage device, what CNX does is just that, like it creates a folder, a single folder. It copies or downloads the ISO to that folder, and that's it. It doesn't do anything else. So it actually is pretty simple, and uh, I, maybe we didn't explain it this way,
Yep, yep.
which may have caused a lot of confusion. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm curious with so ZNX is obviously like you've got it front and center on your website just after your introduction. It's a key
mhm.
piece of technology. So what was the logic behind why did you want to go down this route as opposed to a full installation, or as opposed to any other way of doing it? What to you, what's the value of ZNX? Is it just the fact that it deploys within the single folder and it just feels more simple, or is there more to it than that?
There's simplicity, of course. This is also a way that we can have delta updates, transactional updates.
Yeah.
Uh, and we model this after, I mean, we originally were going to be using OS3, the same thing that uses the Flatpak uses. But we figured that OS3, while allowing us to have delta updates, it was too complicated. So we came up with CNX.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
so the way that we model like the whole deployment and updating and because you can also roll back to the previous version of a deployed system. You can do like a factory reset in the same way that you do it on a phone, for example. So we modeled all of that workflow after Android. So Android definitely plays like a comparative role in how we want Nitrux to work. Because, for example, you have on Android you have the OTA updates, which is like those little updates that your phone gets. It when an update's available, your phone reboots to recovery. It applies the update and it reboots back. That's it. There's no obviously there's no package manager involved. So, and it's the same with CNX. There's when we make a new release, you just enter the command CNX update. It checks the hashes for the deployed ISO file and the new ISO file, and it performs a transactional update. And you don't even have to reboot to a recovery in our case. So
Wow.
it's that simple and that quick. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Oh wow. Okay. This is off to a good start. Okay. So ZNX, very key component. If moving down the list, or on from that, what would you say follows that up as another key component of the Nitrux project, or of the operating system?
Okay. So the next one is Maui Kit. So Maui Kit is a UI framework to create convergent applications using Kirigami, the mobile framework by KDE. So MauiKit is not forking Kirigami. MauiKit is more like an expansion pack to Kirigami. It needs Kirigami to work, but it adds its own controls. Some of them which have been actually upstream to Kirigami, um, but it adds some extra controls for the interface. It also adds a different styling that definitely is different from Kirigami, and the some of the UI workflow is also different from default Kirigami. But it's mostly that the whole reason is to have a UI framework to make convergent applications so that it goes in line with the goal of making the distribution a convergent system.
Got it. Yeah, because and I think this is going to be something that I was going to loop around to a little bit later, and we can dig into it now if you like, or if there's a more appropriate time for it, we'll pick the conversation back up. But one of my initial questions or interests, when a project with all the different components that yours does, one of the things that I was always wondering is what was it about KDE, or the Plasma desktop, or that the Qt framework and all those different pieces. What was it about that particular world that was appealing to you guys and to your goals for the project? Because I know we see obviously a lot of big desktop distributions, put GNOME front and center, and there seems to be a lot of what's the word? Financial backing and momentum with the GNOME project on the desktop, and obviously now, you look at the Librem, the Librem 5 from Purism. They seem to really be pursuing GNOME on a phone, using a lot of the GTK frameworks, and having said that, I would argue that Plasma and Plasma 5 has actually been updating and iterating and becoming a more complete, more adaptable kind of framework than GTK over the last few years. And it's actually become quite a bit more it's more functional, it's lighter on resources, it can look prettier, arguably, out of the box. There just seems to be like a lot of unsung power around KDE and what you can do with it. So I'm just really curious as to what was the decision process for you guys, kind of doubling down on the KDE world, and the the Qt framework and all of the stuff surrounding it.
Well, the choice to use QML, and that's me not being a programmer. QML, it's pretty simple. Even for me, like when I see a QML file for one of the applications that we make with Maui Kit, or even for the plasmoids that we use currently on the distribution, it's actually pretty readable. Even for someone that, yeah, sure, it's part of a team that develops a Linux distribution, but I'm not a programmer. And even then, it's pretty easy to modify something. If I like, I don't like that font. Okay, so I open the file, I modify the value, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem to me that that's the case with uh, GTK software, where
Mm-hmm.
I would have to maybe do more complicated things. And I mean, it all comes down to that simplicity, and also that untapped power, as you say. It's something that wasn't really being pursued
Mm-hmm.
in the past. Like they like there was a tablet project from former KDE developers,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't really get the traction that they would have wanted. And it is understandable, because at the time uh, that wasn't like a focal point of Plasma, or it didn't seem to me that that was the case. So currently there's more of a focus on trying to make Plasma for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like the desktop, as it has always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
So because for example, you take a look at Plasma Mobile, it's a fairly recent project, and it has been receiving a lot more attention, a lot more development time,
Mm-hmm.
and which we also have contributed, by the way. Some of the applications that the Plasma Mobile images ship, two of them are from Maui Kit,
Mm-hmm.
the file manager and the music player, um, and we hope that more are included.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean that focus is recent, and since like since always my idea has been to have a convergent system, I was like, yeah, we should probably collaborate with them and help them improve, you know, Kirigami, and have people adopt the idea of a Qt, a QML, a Plasma uh, KDE frameworks based mobile or convergent platform.
Platform agnostic. Yeah, yeah. No, that's really good. Okay, so ZNX, Maui Kit. What else? I mean, obviously, there's other things that we could talk about here as well. But what are some of the other tools? And I guess just kind of popping in my own comment here. I think when a lot of Linux distributions, they have large ambitions, or they take something that already exists and kind of spin it to suit their own needs. It is really cool to see sort of that cross-pollination going back upstream. So a lot of the work that you guys are doing with Maui Kit, making that available for the people that are wanting to work more on Plasma Mobile, and having applications that can scale and suit different form factors. That's really exciting. So yeah, I know it can be very easy for a Linux or a free software project to kind of silo itself and have its own goals and ambitions, and then realize that there's something lost when the free and open source world doesn't collaborate. So yeah, that's just a nice little I don't know, a pat on the back. I don't know what it is. It's just like, it's good to see. It's good to see. So yeah, what other kind of major components would you like to dig into?
Okay, so there's two more larger components. The first one is, which is right after Maui Kit, is Vmetal. So Vmetal is our way of allowing users to use software that isn't available for Linux. That's basically the whole idea. It's not just focused on gaming. Like, yeah, it came about because I wanted to play games. And I didn't want to have Windows installed on my computer.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was the reason that it was created. But of course, it's not just the only reason that it can be used for. For example, some people actually ask on the Gitter public chat room whether they could run Affinity Designer. I didn't really heard of it, but okay, so I tried, and it does actually work. So, and somebody else also asked if I could run the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. Okay, let me try. I download it, and it runs. So, obviously, not. I have Steam there. I have also Origin. I have the Blizzard launcher. I don't know how it's called. I also have, other Windows specific programs and everything runs. So it's not just like the gaming thing, the gaming aspect. There are games that aren't released for Linux, and that allows people to run those games and to not not have Windows installed side by side on the computer. So that's one, and the other is the whole AppImage integration. We strongly make the point that we focus on AppImage, and AppImage, specifically AppImage, because then again, like just like with CNX, how we modeled after the workflow in Android, AppImages actually provide something that is pretty similar to how an APK file works. You download an APK file, you install it, and it runs. Did you, at no point, you needed to install another APK file to make it work? At no point there's any package manager whatsoever involved, and that is literally the same thing with AppImages. You just download it, give it executable permissions, and run it. Pretty simple.
Yeah. So, and again, I guess this is for me. This is going to be spinning off, a Twitter conversation that I literally was reading this morning, and we'll leave names out of it. But the concept of, and I guess what has been raised different times with AppImages specifically, as opposed to Snap and Flatpak. I guess both of those containerized solutions come from, most of the time they come from a central place, and that central place has some level of curation or security checks and balances, that kind of thing. The concern that people raise with AppImages, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is well, aren't we just going down the same route then as just finding a random .exe file in the Windows world and just using that? Immediately on my end, I'm like, well, no, they're very different things here, because a .exe file literally dumps files all over your hard drive, is integrated almost at the root level of the system, at least as much as it can be on Windows. Architecturally, there's massive differences there. AppImages are containerized. They have a lot more security checks and balances in place, just built into the way that those programs are packaged and the way that they actually run and interact with the system. But I guess the big one that I'll come back to, and I think you guys do have a bit of an answer to this already as the way that the Nitrux project exists. But when it comes to the, I guess, curation and like central management of like pulling together all of the AppImages that exist and presenting it, going, hey, look at all this software that you can go out and get. What's your guys' solution to that problem? Because obviously AppImages are a little bit more, or at least it feels a little bit more decentralized across the internet. You just go to the developers page and, oh, look, they've got an AppImage, I'll download that.
There's definitely the effort to make a central place where people can download AppImages. At least from our side, that's something that, yes, that's needed. And there's specifically there's a website called AppImageHelp.com. It comes from the same team that develops, that maintains the Open Desktop infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty reputable. It's a pretty reputable website, and it's safe to say that the files there are organized in the same way that any other software store is organized. In fact, the app images that you can find on the website are app images that have been made available by the developers of the application, and actually you can see that as part of the information, the information on the page. There's a link to the repository of the developer of the application, and you can see the same file. So it's not like this is a random file that somebody just uploaded. Like,
yep,
it's actually a requirement when you make a new. They call this product. When you make a new product so it's added to the website. It's actually a requirement that you put the GitHub or GitLab or whatever repository, so that people can actually see the source code.
Yes,
and
got it.
The good thing about doing that, it's obviously you have access to the source code, but on the releases page on the repository of the app image, typically they are made with using Travis CI, so you can actually also see the build log of the application. So you can see the source, you can see who's making it, you can see how it's built. So all of that information is.
There's a lot of transparency there. Yeah, that's excellent. Wow. So okay, so we've got AppImages being key to this whole thing, and or being one of the keys to making this whole project work. I think the fascinating thing for me, and I think I was only just starting to learn about these new containerized package formats probably at the end of 2017. I think that was when they first really started coming on my radar, and at that point in time I wasn't as engaged in the Linux and open source world as I had been. I just had a lot of other stuff going on in my life, and I just, as soon as I saw the rumblings and the momentum that these package formats were gaining, I was like, this is it. Like, we have solved one of the biggest problems of Linux software, just because of the sheer amount of energy and effort that goes into packaging a particular piece of software for all the different Linux distributions out there. That's a nightmare, and that comes down to, I guess, we can go back to the whole fragmentation conversation. It's it's a long one. It could probably go forever, but I can. There's a bit of a theme that obviously the simplicity of all the different tools and pieces that you're using for the Nitrux project, but also there definitely seems to be the choices that you're making with the project, the tools that you're trying to use, is in at least from where I'm sitting, it kind of feels like you're trying to limit the amount of fragmentation that that another Linux distribution could possibly introduce to the open source world. In that you're using tools that will take care of the operating system without having a huge traditional repository package manager kind of structure to run the actual system, which is crazy. It just, like, technologically, it kind of blows your mind compared to a lot of the other traditional ways that operating systems have been managed. And then you've got, you've settled on a universal kind of standard for how your applications are going to be managed. You've got a toolkit and a framework that you want to use to develop applications so that they can very easily sit alongside upstream projects with Plasma. So I don't know. I would love to hear your comments around sort of Linux and fragmentation and how, I don't know, how those ideas, have they influenced the choices that you've made at all, or is it literally just been, this is the simplest tool for the job, and as it just so happens, we are using tools that aren't introducing too much fragmentation? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it definitely is using following the Unix philosophy. One thing that works. That's it. We don't want to create yet again something that adds to that fragmentation. That's the reason that, for example, many people think that using CNX, for example, would prevent them to use the package manager of whatever distribution. Just because we don't specifically focus on using a package manager. As it is the case, CNX doesn't limit any of that. Like, you can, if an ISO file of whatever other distribution is modified in the same way that we modify ours, they can deploy it with CNX. Mm-hmm. They can, for example, I don't know, let's say it uses Pacman. You can still perfectly install, remove, use Pacman in the same exact way that you have been using Pacman all of the time. It doesn't limit any of that. It's simply, in that case, for example, you would say, well, why would you want to use CNX if I have Pacman to manage my operating system? Well, you have the option to do the factory reset. You can have the option to go back to the previous version of a distribution. Good luck trying to do that with an installer, with a package manager. But even Android doesn't do that. You have to reflash the ROM to go back to a previous version. CNX actually allows to do that. So in that case, for example, it's more of a safety net. Yeah, you can use Pacman or whatever package manager that you want. CNX doesn't interfere with that. So with AppImages, it's the same thing. It's the whole point is having something that it's simple, that I don't have to learn how to use it. I can just download a file, literally. Mm-hmm. That because and I find it weird that people say, "Oh, why would I download a random file from the internet?" Yeah. How do you sideload things on your phone? Don't you exactly do that? I don't see anyone complain. I mean, yes, it's not a secure thing to do, but it's doable, it's possible, and people do that.
And
I
on
don't
the
see
flip side,
debug. Yeah.
those same people will be going, well, I don't want to just randomly download a random file off the internet, even if it is being packaged using very open standards and it's a very transparent process. That just seems dodgy to me. Those same people will be saying, but the way that a certain other containerized, standard is operating with a centralized proprietary server on the back end that is keeping everything maintained, secure, and all that kind of thing. They're not going to like that either, in terms of having that one central place to find packages or to find these containerized apps. So yeah, I don't know. There's no pleasing some people, but the good news is that a lot of these tools, like you mentioned, and a lot of the way that you're doing things is encouraging more simplicity in how we approach software. And because we just have, at least my read on the situation is that we have the technology in place now. We have these amazing tools. We have these ways of doing things that just didn't exist like 10 years ago. Am I right in saying that? In that Nitrux as a project, as it currently exists, would not have been technologically possible 10 years ago?
Nope, it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah. And so to me, that's just an exciting place to be. In the world. Look, there's only one thing that I wanted to loop around and come back to before we kind of move on to just kind of wrapping up our conversation and the future of the Nitrux project. And that was just around your comments around Vmetal. We kind of, you briefly introduced what that is, and obviously the number one opposition to widespread adoption of Linux as a viable platform is the fact that there's always going to be that one program or that one application, service, whatever, that relies on a well-known operating system that so people are always going to have that complaint. So you've obviously approached this in a very different way to what traditionally to what we've been used to hearing. Obviously, the wine community has been going for a very long time, and it's a constant game of whack-a-mole with those guys of a new thing will come out, they'll try and support it, and if it's too hard, it's too hard, and that's where the Adobe Creative Suite just kind of falls off the cliff, and other software like it. And then others will say, well, you just got to run a virtual machine. That's just what you got to do. But there's just so much overhead and so much other issues that introduces. So I just wanted to kind of briefly get a few more details around that, just for people that are listening in and going, oh, there's a different way that you can run like Windows-based applications. So what are the benefits of Vmetal and that tool as opposed to some of these other methods, whether it's running a compatibility layer, running a more supported compatibility layer like Crossover Linux, which those guys do amazing work and they contribute to Wine. It's amazing, and then obviously virtual machines. Like what are the pros that Vmetal can bring as opposed to those other solutions?
Hardware acceleration. That's the first thing. You can use a VirtualBox and put Windows, and probably it will run. But it won't run fast. It's a virtual machine. It's not accelerated. Now, what Vmetal does, and we never said otherwise. It uses QEMU, it uses KVM, it uses BFIO. We always say that. And the whole point is to provide a hardware accelerated environment. So that's like the major benefit. Now, Vmetal currently, like if you download Vmetal, if you download the distribution and you execute Vmetal, you don't have to set up anything. You don't have to. The only thing that you have to do is download the Windows 10 ISO file so that you can install it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. You don't have to configure absolutely anything. It will run.
Wow.
That's the idea. That it
Sure.
just works.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to and again, the Mac world have been, this is not a new problem. Those that have been working on Mac OS for years know that at some point they're going to need to interact with Windows as well. I just thought it was worth shining a little bit of light on that, because of the fact that those who know what they're doing can set up, Windows in a QEMU or in an environment that gives them the hardware acceleration, but it's not nearly as user friendly or as streamlined as spinning up an image in VirtualBox or just trying to dual boot or something like that. So just appreciate the added elegance and simplicity of that. Okay, so looking at Nitrux right now, what is the big release that people can go out and get, and then what's the next big release that people can go out and get or look forward to and follow?
Well, we make releases every month, basically, every last Friday or Saturday if there's something that breaks. It's continuously released. It's not like a fixed release and we wait, many months
Yep.
to update it.
Yep.
It's every month, and I mean that's on the stable version. The development release is basically like continuously updated, and so, but at the same time, it's not stable because we do use it to test whatever new changes we introduce. So, I mean, only use it if you want to help us debug things. Otherwise, yes, we use the stable version. The current version is 1.2.3, and every 10 months we increase the version number. So, but I mean, it's all the same. It's every month new release, every month new release.
Yeah, and I noticed, I believe, on Medium, is that where, and there probably is other places that you publish this as well, but I noticed that you guys have a have a list of updates that goes out on Medium in terms of what what things you fixed and changes you've introduced and that kind of thing. I'm guessing, is that the primary kind of way that you release notes?
No, that actually was something recent. We figured that people just keep thinking that the only thing that we did was take Ubuntu and put Plasma and add themes. So very obviously that's not what we do.
Sure.
So we figured that it would be better to have something of a summary that people can easily read, and that's what we use the blog mostly these days. From time to time, we also publish articles specifically about a single project or to clarify things that we make. But yeah, I mean, mostly it's social media posts on Facebook, on Twitter, on Mastodon, on Instagram, on miwi.com. On all of those I do cross posting. So in any platform that people decide to follow us, then they're gonna get the same information.
Yeah, excellent. I think and honestly, looking at a lot of the projects that I really admire, a lot of it does come down to just really good communication, and being able to articulate why you make the decisions that you do as a team, and the priorities that you have for the project. It all comes down to, and how people perceive the project all comes down to communication. So yeah, just applaud that. Just chuck information out there, and wherever people find it, it's a good thing. Okay, so kind of looking ahead to, actually, before we look ahead to the future, I think a key thing, and this wasn't on the notes that I sent you, so feel free to kind of take this wherever you want to go. But obviously, a key part of sustainable development in open source projects does come down to funding. So when it comes to the Nitrux team and how you guys put food on the table, how does that process work, and what does it look like for the Nitrux project?
Uh, well, uh, 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 obviously we work full time on the distribution, and well, I mean, in everything that we do it full time. As I mentioned, there's 5 of us. There's me, Uri Herrera. There's Luis Lavaire. He is the developer of CNX. There's Camilo Iquita and Anupam Basak. Both work on Maui Kit, and we even have a new developer joined. Um, his name is Marcos Ademir, and so yeah, so we are a business, right? We are not a non-profit. We're not a foundation. We're a business, and we have to generate revenue to pay for, I mean, not only like the usual costs of, paying for servers, for paying for hosting, paying for hardware to test things. Uh, we obviously have to pay for our salaries. So yeah, if you visit the website, right, and you want to download the stable version, you will see a paywall, and that's the only reason there is a paywall. We need to pay for the development time that we spend on it. Currently, we are doing it by from our own pockets. Uh, we we're using our own money basically. So, but I mean, as it's evident that if we want to grow, have more developers, and more developers would mean more polished software products. There needs to be money, uh, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
People have to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I do think it is a little bit of a shame that for a technology and for a platform that people have such a love for. I mean, the people that use Linux full time love Linux way more than people that use Windows. I mean, you don't hear anyone who ever uses Windows saying, "I just freaking love using Windows." And Mac. I think Mac used to be a little bit like that. It's less so now. At least that's my read. So it just kind of boggles my mind that such a passionate user base can get so hung up on, I don't want to fork out actual money for this thing. I just want to be able to enjoy it and never fund the people that put long hours of work into this thing. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But no, I appreciate you clearing that up. And so yeah, look. Honestly, for anyone who's listening and they want to go and check out Nitrux, as I understand, they can go and get the developer version if they're looking to try things out or just experiment with it or maybe contribute to it in some way, and they can run that and find that for free. But if they want to, financially for free, but if they want to enjoy kind of the polished, stable product, that is behind the paywall. Is that correct? Yeah.
yes,
Excellent. Alrighty. So, okay. Did you want to just briefly speak into the future of the project, or what are some of the biggest priorities that you guys are working on at the moment?
The biggest one right now is porting everything to ARM, to ARM 64 specifically, and we want to target the PinePhone.
Yes.
We want to have the whole Maui desktop experience, so to speak, because we already have the applications, we have the framework. The only thing that we are really missing right now is the desktop shell. We have a prototype, but it's a prototype. It's not something that can be used right now. But yeah, and we also are trying to make it easier to create app images, uh, specifically so that you as a developer, right, you want your application to run on Linux, so that you can target the usual x64, but you also can target other architectures like ARM, like maybe in the future PowerPC, and RISC when it becomes more readily available. So we are also working towards that. And oh, well, I mean, in general, so have Nitrux run on ARM, on PowerPC, and other architectures other than x64, and also have Maui Kit applications for embedded systems like uh, smart TVs, smart anything, but using an operating system that doesn't have holes in it and that can actually be safely updated. And yeah, all of that. Oh, and also Vmetal Cloud, so that people that don't use Nitrux or don't want to use Nitrux, which is fine, um, can also enjoy Vmetal, other Linux distributions, PSD distributions, Solaris distributions, Illumos distributions, and every other
Wow.
unit. And it's actually like Mac OS also removed 32-bit support. So yeah, good timing from Apple, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting, man. There's a lot going on. That definitely would keep the five of you very busy. Okay, so
Yeah.
where can people find out more about the project, and where can people sort of interact with you or any of the other team if they want to find out more about this project or dig into it a little bit further?
Uh, Definitely following us on social media, following the blog at Medium, and we have a public chat room on gitter.im. We also have a Telegram channel, uh, but it mostly cross posts from the other social media accounts. So follow us on Mastodon if you want, and that's fine. It's also constantly updated in the same way that the other platforms are. So that's definitely the best way to follow and get to know what we are doing, and to chat definitely gitter.im. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So good. Well, look, really appreciate the conversation that we've had today, Uri. Look, if those of you who are watching, feel free to comment down below, and I'm sure Uri will be able to, maybe address some questions or comments that you guys have, as well as myself, and definitely if there seems to be a common theme or something that crops up, we'll try and pin that comment. And if there ends up being some common things that Uri or myself can address, then we'll definitely pin those there so that people can find that information more easily. But yeah, look, I think that kind of wraps up our conversation for today. Big thank to you, Uri, and it's been really interesting to unpack this project properly, and be able to hear some of the ideas and ambitions and motivations behind this project. It's always super fascinating stuff. And so wish your project the very best for the future, and and we'll definitely be looking into the project itself. And obviously, for those who watch my channel, you can obviously expect a more up-to-date video on that. I probably won't pin the old one because there's just so much that's changed since the last video that I did. It was a few years ago now. So yeah, you can expect another look into that coming up in the near future. But thank you once again, Uri, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. We'll see who else we can chat to. Peace out.